My name is Rebecca Walsh. I'm 37 years old, and I'm a veterinarian from Nashville, Tennessee. For 3 years, my husband beat me almost daily while my identical twin sister, my other half, my best friend since birth, told me I was exaggerating, that I was too sensitive, that I needed to try harder to make my marriage work. "He's under a lot of stress, Rebecca," Emma would say when I'd call her crying after another violent episode. "You know how demanding his job is. Maybe if you didn't provoke him." My own twin sister blamed me for my abuse. She defended the man who choked me unconscious, who broke my ribs, who burned me with cigarettes. She took his side every single time because he'd charmed her completely, and she couldn't believe her perfect brother-in-law was capable of violence, until the day I stripped off my clothes in her living room and showed her what 3 years of abuse looked like on my body. The cigarette burns covering my back, the scars from where he'd cut me with broken glass, the permanent damage to my ribs that would never heal properly, the ligature marks on my neck from the times he'd strangled me until I passed out. When Emma saw what her denial had allowed to continue, she collapsed on the floor sobbing, and then she became my fiercest ally in bringing him down. Before I tell you how we worked together to gather evidence, how we trapped him into confessing on recording, and how my twin sister's testimony sent him to prison for 15 years, hit that like button and subscribe. Drop your location in the comments, because this story might save your life. Let me take you back to when I thought I'd found my forever. I met Daniel Walsh in the spring of 2019 at a veterinary conference in Memphis. I was 33 years old, 5 years into my career as a small animal veterinarian at a busy clinic in Nashville. He was 36, working as a pharmaceutical sales representative for a company that manufactured veterinary medications. We met at a networking reception. He approached me with champagne and a smile that could light up a room. "Dr. Walsh?" he said, reading my name badge. "Any relation to the famous Walsh twins of Nashville?" I laughed. "That's us. How did you know?" "Your clinic's reputation precedes you. Everyone in veterinary pharma knows about the twin vets who run the most successful practice in Middle Tennessee. Which one are you, Rebecca or Emma?" "Rebecca. Emma's back at the clinic holding down the fort while I'm here learning about new pain management protocols." "Lucky me that you're the one who came to Memphis." He extended his hand. "Daniel Walsh. No relation, unfortunately, though I'd be honored to share that name with someone as accomplished as you." That charm, that immediate warmth, that way of making me feel like the most interesting person in the room, it was intoxicating. We spent the entire reception talking about veterinary medicine, about the challenges of running a practice, about our families. Daniel was fascinated by my twin sister and my relationship, how we'd both become veterinarians, how we'd opened our practice together, how we could finish each other's sentences and know what the other was thinking. "That bond must be incredible," he said, "to have someone who knows you that completely." "It is. Emma's my other half, always has been." Daniel and I dated long distance for 6 months. Nashville to Memphis was only 3 hours, and he drove to see me every weekend. He'd show up at my apartment with flowers, with dinner reservations planned, ready to hear about my week. He attended the clinic's charity fundraiser and charmed every person there, especially Emma, who pulled me aside and said, "Rebecca, he's perfect. Don't let this one go." Emma loved Daniel from the start. She loved how attentive he was, how he remembered details about our childhood stories, how he supported my career ambitions. "You found a good one," she'd tell me. "He's exactly what you deserve." 8 months after we met, Daniel proposed during a weekend trip to Gatlinburg. He'd rented a cabin in the mountains, planned a romantic dinner, and got down on one knee with a beautiful emerald ring, my birthstone, that he'd designed himself. "Rebecca, you're the most compassionate, intelligent, beautiful woman I've ever met. Watching you care for animals, building your practice with your sister, being so devoted to your family, It makes me want to be a better man. Will you marry me and let me spend my life supporting your dreams and being part of the Walsh twin legacy? I said yes through happy tears. How could I not? Daniel seemed to understand everything about me. My passion for veterinary medicine, my close relationship with Emma, my desire for a partner who'd celebrate my success rather than compete with it. We married in October 2019 in a beautiful outdoor ceremony at Cheekwood Estate in Nashville. Emma was my maid of honor, standing beside me in a champagne-colored dress that perfectly complemented the autumn leaves. Daniel's vows were heartfelt and poetic. Rebecca, I promise to be your safe harbor. I promise to protect you, cherish you, and make sure you always know how extraordinary you are. I promise that what's mine is yours, and we'll build a life together based on trust, respect, and unwavering love. Every person at our wedding commented on what a perfect couple we were. My parents adored Daniel. He'd bonded with my father over their shared love of fishing, and he'd brought my mother flowers every time he visited. Emma gave a toast that made everyone cry. Rebecca and I have been inseparable since before we were born. We shared a womb, shared a room, shared dreams. When she told me she'd met Daniel, I was worried. Would he come between us? Would he resent our closeness? But Daniel embraced it. He didn't see Emma as competition. He saw her as part of the package, and that's how I knew he truly loved my sister. Our first year of marriage was everything I'd hoped for. Daniel had relocated to Nashville for a regional sales manager position with his pharmaceutical company, so we were finally in the same city. We bought a beautiful craftsman house in East Nashville, close enough to my clinic that I could walk to work. Daniel encouraged me to keep my long hours and demanding schedule. He understood that veterinary emergencies didn't follow a 9-to-5 timeline. You save lives, Rebecca. That's more important than having dinner ready at 6, he'd say when I'd apologize for late nights at the clinic. Daniel integrated himself into my life seamlessly. He came to clinic events, donated to our charity initiatives, volunteered to help with our annual low-cost vaccination days. He became friends with Emma and her husband Scott, and we'd have weekly dinners together, two couples who genuinely enjoyed each other's company. Emma would tell me regularly how lucky I was. Daniel's 1 in a million, Beck. Scott's great, but Daniel is on another level. He's so supportive, so devoted. He adores you. And I believed he did. Those first 12 months, Daniel seemed perfect. Attentive without being clingy. Successful without being arrogant. Charming without being manipulative. He'd bring me coffee during long surgeries, leave love notes on my car, tell me daily that I was his everything. But what I didn't see, what neither Emma nor I could see, was that Daniel was methodically studying me during that first year, learning my insecurities, identifying my pressure points, mapping out exactly how to control me. He was charming Emma because he knew she was my closest confidant, and having her loyalty would be crucial when the abuse started. He was embedding himself into my family and my practice so that when I tried to leave, everyone would think I was the problem, not him. The perfect husband I thought I'd married was actually a predator conducting a year-long research project on his prey. And when he felt secure enough, when he'd convinced Emma I was lucky to have him, when he'd made my parents see him as the ideal son-in-law, when he'd integrated himself so completely into my life that leaving seemed impossible, the mask started to slip. The first incident happened in November 2020, about 13 months into our marriage. I came home late from an emergency surgery. A dog had been hit by a car and needed immediate intervention. It was 11 p.m. when I finally walked through our front door, exhausted and still in my scrubs. Daniel was sitting in the living room in the dark, and something about the stillness of his posture made my stomach drop. "Where were you?" His voice was flat, controlled. "Emergency surgery. I texted you. A golden retriever was hit by a car and..." "You texted me at 7 saying you'd be home by 9. It's 11. The surgery was more complicated than I expected. Daniel, you know how emergencies work. He stood up slowly, walked toward me, and I noticed his hands were clenched into fists. You know what I think? I think you weren't at the clinic. I think you were with someone else. What? Daniel, that's insane. Call the clinic. Ask Emma. We were in surgery for 3 hours. Oh, Emma will cover for you. You two have your little twin code. Your little secrets. There are no secrets. I was literally elbow deep in a dog's abdomen trying to save its life. Prove it. The demand hung in the air. How was I supposed to prove where I'd been? Daniel, this is ridiculous. His hand shot out and grabbed my wrist, squeezing hard enough that I gasped. Don't ever call me ridiculous. I'm your husband. You don't get to disrespect me in my own house. You're hurting me. Good. Maybe that'll help you remember to answer your fucking phone when I call. He released my wrist and walked past me to the bedroom, leaving me standing in the hallway shaking. When I looked down, there were red marks where his fingers had been. The next morning, Daniel was back to his charming self. He apologized profusely, said work stress was making him crazy, brought me flowers and my favorite coffee. I'm so sorry, baby. I don't know what got into me. I was just worried about you. Forgive me? I forgave him. Because it was one incident. Because he seemed genuinely remorseful. Because I loved him and wanted to believe this was an aberration. The second incident came 2 weeks later. I was getting ready for our weekly dinner with Emma and Scott when Daniel came into the bathroom and looked at my outfit, a fitted dress I'd worn dozens of times. You're not wearing that. What? Why not? It's too revealing. You look like you're trying to attract attention. I stared at him in the mirror. Daniel, this is the same dress I wore to your company party last month. You said you loved it. I changed my mind. Go change into something that doesn't make you look like a slut. The word hit me like a slap. Excuse me? His face darkened. Don't make me repeat myself, Rebecca. Change. Now. Something in his tone made me obey. I changed into jeans and a sweater, something loose and shapeless. At dinner with Emma and Scott, I was quiet, withdrawn. Emma noticed immediately. Beck, you okay? You seem off. Just tired. Long week at the clinic. Daniel jumped in smoothly, putting his arm around me. She's been working herself to death. I keep telling her to take it easy, but you know Rebecca, always putting animals before herself. Emma nodded sympathetically. That's my sister, always the caretaker. Later, when Emma and I were alone in the kitchen, she asked again. Really? Are you okay? Something feels wrong. I wanted to tell her. I wanted to say that Daniel had called me a slut and forced me to change clothes, but how would that sound? My husband didn't like my dress, seemed petty, oversensitive. And knowing Emma adored Daniel, would she even believe me? I'm fine, I said, just stressed. The third incident was worse. In December, I made the mistake of laughing at a joke one of my male veterinary technicians told during a staff meeting. When I got home that night, Daniel was waiting. Who's Adam? He demanded. Adam? He's my vet tech. Why? I saw the way you were laughing with him. I drove by the clinic today and saw you two through the window. You were very cozy. Daniel, we were in a staff meeting. There were 6 people in the room. Don't lie to me. I saw how you looked at him. I didn't look at him anyway. He told a joke about a cat. Daniel moved so fast I didn't see it coming. His hand connected with my face, an open palm slap that sent me stumbling backward into the wall. My cheek exploded with pain, my ear ringing from the impact. That's for lying, he said calmly. Next time I catch you flirting, it'll be worse. I stood against the wall, hand on my burning cheek, too shocked to cry. My husband had just hit me. Daniel, the man who'd vowed to protect and cherish me, had struck me in anger. "I'm sorry," he said immediately, his face shifting to distress. "Oh God, Rebecca, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. You just made me so angry. Why do you push me like this?" He pulled me into a hug, and I stood there rigid, not knowing what to do. "It's your fault," he whispered in my ear. "You make me crazy with jealousy. If you'd just be faithful, if you'd just respect me, I wouldn't have to discipline you." Discipline? He'd called hitting me discipline. The next day, I had a visible handprint on my face. I covered it with makeup and told Emma I'd walked into a cabinet door. She believed me, because why wouldn't she? Daniel was perfect. I was just clumsy. The fourth incident came in January 2021 when Daniel locked me in our bedroom for 6 hours because I'd gone to lunch with a female colleague without asking permission first. "You don't leave this house without telling me where you're going, who you're with, and when you'll be back," he said through the locked door while I pounded and screamed. When he finally let me out, I called Emma, sobbing. He locked me in the bedroom. "Emma, this isn't normal. I think Daniel's abusive." "Rebecca, slow down. What happened?" I told her everything. The grabbing, the slap, the isolation, the control. I expected her to be horrified, to tell me to leave immediately, to offer to come get me. Instead, she sighed. "Beck, you've been under a lot of stress. Are you sure you're not overreacting? I mean, locking you in a room sounds extreme, but maybe Daniel was trying to prevent you from doing something rash. Were you threatening to leave?" "I wasn't threatening anything. I was trying to go to work." "Look, marriage is hard. Scott and I have had fights too. Maybe you're both adjusting to living together. Daniel's under a lot of pressure with his promotion. Maybe you need couples counseling." "Emma, he hit me." "He did? When? Why didn't you tell me immediately?" "I tried. You said I walked into a cabinet. Because that's what you told me. Rebecca, if he's hitting you, that's serious. But are you sure it wasn't an accident? Were you fighting, and he pushed you and you fell?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My twin sister, my best friend, my other half, was making excuses for my abuser. "Emma, whose side are you on?" "Yours. Always yours. But I also know Daniel, and he's not a violent person. He adores you. Maybe there's something else going on. Stress, medication side effects, miscommunication. Before you blow up your marriage, maybe try to work through this." I hung up feeling more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. The fifth incident came in February when Daniel discovered I'd hidden $2,000 in a separate bank account Emma had helped me open. Emergency money in case I needed to leave quickly. He found the bank statements in my car and went ballistic. "You're planning to leave me? After everything I've done for you?" "No, I just wanted—" His fist connected with my stomach, driving the air from my lungs. I collapsed on the kitchen floor, gasping, and he kicked me in the ribs. Once, twice, 3 times. I felt something crack. "You don't get to leave me," he said, standing over me while I writhed in pain. "You're mine. Your money is mine. Your life is mine. Do you understand?" I nodded, unable to speak, unable to breathe properly. He pulled me up by my hair and dragged me to the bathroom mirror. "Look at yourself. Look how pathetic you are. No one else would want you. Emma thinks you're unstable. Your parents think you're dramatic. I'm the only one who puts up with your shit. You're lucky I love you." I looked in the mirror at the woman Daniel had created, bruised, terrified, broken. This wasn't who I'd been 3 months ago. This wasn't who I'd been before I married him. Over the next month, the abuse escalated rapidly. Daniel would punch me for burning dinner, choke me for talking to male clients, burn me with cigarettes when I disrespected him, lock me in the closet overnight if I tried to call for help. The violence became routine, expected, almost scheduled. And through it all, Emma continued to defend him. When I'd show up to work with bruises, she'd say I was clumsy. When I'd tell her about the abuse, she'd suggest I was provoking him. When I begged her to believe me, she'd say I was being overdramatic. Rebecca, I love you, but I think you need therapy. You're seeing abuse where there's just normal marital conflict. Daniel's been nothing but wonderful to you. Maybe you have some trauma from childhood that's making you interpret his actions as threatening when they're not. My own twin sister had become Daniel's enabler, his apologist, his shield, because he'd charmed her so thoroughly that she literally couldn't imagine him being violent. And without Emma's support, I felt trapped. If my own twin didn't believe me, who would? By March 2021, 18 months into my marriage, the abuse had become a daily reality. Daniel had established complete control over my life, monitoring my phone, tracking my location, controlling our finances, isolating me from everyone except Emma and my parents, who he'd convinced I was going through something and needed their patience, not intervention. The first major escalation came on a Tuesday when I tried to leave. I'd packed a bag while Daniel was at work, called a domestic violence hotline, and was waiting for a friend to pick me up when Daniel came home early. He found my packed bag in the bedroom. Going somewhere? His voice was eerily calm. Daniel, I can't do this anymore. I need space. He grabbed the bag and dumped its contents on the floor. Then he grabbed me by the throat and slammed me against the wall, his face inches from mine. You're not going anywhere. You're my wife. You took vows, for better or worse. This is the worst part, Rebecca. This is where you prove you're not a quitter. His hand tightened on my throat. I couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. Black spots danced in my vision. This is it, I thought. He's going to kill me. At the last second, he released me. I collapsed to the floor, gasping and coughing. He kicked me once in the ribs, the same ribs he'd already fractured in February, and the pain was so intense, I vomited. Clean up this mess, he said, gesturing to my scattered clothes and the vomit on the floor. And get rid of that fucking bag. You're not leaving me, ever. That night, after he'd fallen asleep, I locked myself in the bathroom and documented my injuries with my phone. The handprint bruises on my throat, the boot-shaped bruise on my ribs, the cigarette burns he'd inflicted over the past month. I sent the photos to a secret email account Daniel didn't know existed, building evidence for the day I'd finally escape. The second major incident happened 2 weeks later, when Daniel found out I'd confided in one of my veterinary technicians about the abuse. The tech, Marissa, had noticed my bruises and asked if I was safe. In a moment of desperation, I'd told her the truth. Marissa had urged me to call the police. Dr. Walsh, what you're describing is severe domestic violence. You need to report this before he kills you. But I was afraid Daniel would talk his way out of it, afraid Emma would testify on his behalf, afraid I'd lose my practice, my reputation, my family. So I'd asked Marissa to keep it confidential while I figured out what to do. Daniel found out because he'd put tracking software on my phone and read my text messages. That evening, he came to the clinic during my shift and dragged me out to the parking lot. You told Marissa? He was shaking with rage. You told some 25-year-old tech about our private life? Daniel, I needed someone to talk to. His fist connected with my face, breaking my nose. Blood streamed down my face as he grabbed my hair and slammed my head against the side of my car. Once, twice, 3 times. I heard my skull crack against the metal and felt warm blood running down my neck. You don't talk about me. You don't tell anyone anything. What happens in our house stays in our house. Do you understand? I nodded, barely conscious. He shoved me into my car, drove me home, and locked me in our bedroom for 3 days. No food, no water, no medical care for my broken nose or concussion. When he finally let me out, I was so dehydrated and weak I could barely walk. Go to the hospital, he said coldly. Tell them you fell down the stairs. If you say anything else, I'll kill Marissa. I know where she lives. I know her routine. 1 word to the cops, and she dies. Your choice. I went to the emergency room and told them I'd fallen downstairs. The ER doctor looked at my injuries skeptically. Broken nose, concussion, dehydration, bruising consistent with assault. But I stuck to my story. They treated me and let me go. When Emma visited me the next day, she looked at my face with concern. Beck, falling downstairs doesn't usually break someone's nose and give them a concussion. What really happened? Daniel beat me. He locked me in our bedroom for 3 days without food or water. He threatened to kill Marissa if I reported him. Emma, please, you have to believe me this time. Emma's face was conflicted. Rebecca, I want to believe you, but I talked to Daniel last night. He said you tried to leave him, and when he confronted you, you attacked him. He said you're having some kind of breakdown and hurting yourself to get attention. What? Emma, look at my face. Look at these bruises. How could I do this to myself? People with severe mental health issues can self-harm in ways that look like assault. Rebecca, I think you need psychiatric help. Daniel suggested we do an intervention. An intervention? Emma, your brother-in-law is beating me nearly every day, and you want to do an intervention for my mental health? Because I think you're having a psychotic break. The Rebecca I know wouldn't accuse her husband of abuse without proof. The Rebecca I know wouldn't make up stories about being locked in rooms or threatened. Something's wrong with you, and we need to help you before you hurt yourself worse. I stared at my twin sister, my mirror image, my other half, and realized she was completely lost to Daniel's manipulation. He'd convinced her I was mentally ill, that I was lying, that I was the problem. And without Emma believing me, I had no one. The third major escalation came in May, when Daniel discovered I'd been secretly saving money again. This time, I'd been collecting cash from under-the-table grooming services I provided on weekends. Small amounts Daniel wouldn't notice missing. I'd hidden $3,500 in a tampon box, thinking he'd never look there. He found it during one of his regular searches of my belongings, a violation of privacy he performed weekly to make sure I wasn't planning to leave. What's this? He held up the cash, his face cold with fury. Emergency money. In case something happens. In case you try to leave me again, you mean? He took the money, every dollar I'd carefully saved. Then he took his lit cigarette and grabbed my arm. You want to steal from me? Let me show you what happens to thieves. He pressed the burning cigarette into my inner forearm. The pain was indescribable. I screamed, but he held me firm, pressing it into my skin for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only seconds. When he finally removed it, there was a perfect circular burn mark. That's one, he said. You had $3,500. That's $3,500 bills you stole from me. So, you're getting 35 burn marks. Over the next hour, Daniel methodically burned me 35 times with cigarettes. On my back, my stomach, my arms, my legs. Places that could be hidden with clothing. He made me count each one. By the time he finished, I was sobbing uncontrollably, my body covered in burns that would scar permanently. Now you look like the liar you are, he said. Marked, branded, mine. The fourth major incident was the worst yet. In June, Daniel came home drunk and in a rage because his boss had reprimanded him about a missed sales quota. He needed a target for his anger, and I was convenient. He beat me for 2 hours straight. Punching, kicking, choking, slamming me into walls. At one point, he threw me down the basement stairs. I tumbled down 15 steps, hitting concrete at the bottom, and felt my ribs crack again, this time on my other side. When I couldn't move anymore, when I was lying at the bottom of the stairs bleeding and broken, he came down and crouched beside me. You know why I do this? He whispered. Because I can. Because you're weak. Because even your own twin sister thinks you're crazy. I've convinced everyone you're unstable. If you died right now, Rebecca, everyone would think you finally succeeded in killing yourself. All those stories about your abusive husband, they'd say you were delusional. They'd say I tried to help you, but you were too far gone. He stood up and walked back upstairs, leaving me on the concrete floor. I lay there for hours, unable to move, certain I was going to die in my own basement with my twin sister thinking I was mentally ill, and my husband upstairs calmly watching television. Eventually, I managed to crawl to the stairs and pull myself up, step by agonizing step. When I made it to the kitchen, Daniel was eating dinner like nothing had happened. You need to go to the ER, he said casually. Tell them you fell down the stairs again. You're so clumsy. This time, the ER staff was more suspicious. A social worker pulled me aside. Dr. Walsh, these injuries are consistent with severe assault. Your medical records show you've been here 4 times in 6 months with injuries allegedly from falling. We're concerned you're being abused. Wanted to tell her everything. I wanted to confess that my husband was systematically torturing me, and my own sister didn't believe me. But Daniel was in the waiting room, and I knew if I said anything, he'd kill me. Maybe not immediately, but eventually, and he'd make it look like suicide. I'm just clumsy, I said. I trip a lot. I promise I'm fine. The social worker gave me a card for a domestic violence shelter. If you ever need help, call this number, day or night. They'll get you somewhere safe. I took the card and hid it in my shoe, knowing Daniel would search my purse and pockets before we left the hospital. The 5th and most calculated incident came in July, when Emma finally started to question her own beliefs. She'd come to visit unexpectedly and found me lying on the couch, unable to move without pain. My face was bruised. My arms were in long sleeves despite the summer heat. I was clearly not well. Beck, I'm worried about you. You look terrible. Have you seen a doctor? I've seen lots of doctors. They all tell me I'm falling a lot. Are you? Falling? What do you think, Emma? She sat down beside me, really looking at me for the first time in months. I think something's very wrong. But Daniel says you won't accept help. He says you're refusing therapy, refusing medication. Emma, has it occurred to you that Daniel is lying? Why would he lie? He loves you. He's been so patient with my what? My mental illness? My dramatic personality? Emma, I need you to really think. We've known each other for 37 years. We shared a womb. We've never kept secrets. Do I seem mentally ill to you? Or do I seem like someone who's being hurt and no one believes her? Emma's face wavered with doubt. I don't know anymore. I want to believe you, but Daniel's so convincing. And you have been acting differently, withdrawn, anxious, jumpy. That could be mental illness, or it could be trauma. I just don't know. Come upstairs with me, I said suddenly. I want to show you something. Show me what? The truth. We went upstairs to my bedroom. I locked the door and started to undress. Emma looked uncomfortable. Rebecca, what are you doing? I'm showing you what 3 years of marriage to Daniel Walsh looks like. If this resonates with you, if you've ever been in an abusive relationship where no one believed you, please hit that like button and subscribe. Because what happened next, when Emma finally saw the evidence of my abuse, changed everything. I stood in my bedroom and stripped off my clothes in front of my twin sister. The long sleeves that had hidden my arms, the jeans that covered my legs, the loose shirt that concealed my torso. Piece by piece, I removed the carefully constructed costume I'd been wearing for months to hide Daniel's brutality. Emma's face went from confused to horrified as my body was revealed. The cigarette burns covered my back like a constellation. 35 perfect circles where Daniel had branded me. Some were fresh and raw. Others had scarred into permanent marks I'd carry forever. Emma counted them silently, her hand over her mouth. The ligature marks on my neck from the times he'd strangled me. Dark purple bruises that formed patterns of fingers. There were at least 6 distinct handprints visible, each from a different assault. The bruises on my torso in various stages of healing, yellow, green, purple, black. My ribs were visibly misshapen on both sides where they'd been broken and healed incorrectly because I'd never gotten proper medical treatment. The scars on my forearms where Daniel had cut me with broken glass during a particularly violent episode in April. The wounds had required stitches, but I'd been too afraid to go to the hospital, so I'd superglued them shut myself. They'd healed badly, leaving raised, angry scars. The boot-shaped bruises on my legs and back from being kicked repeatedly. The burn mark on my inner thigh from when Daniel had used a hot iron as punishment for talking back. The bald patches on my scalp where he'd ripped out my hair by the roots. But the worst was my face. Without makeup, the damage was clear. A nose that had been broken and healed crooked. A scar through my eyebrow where my head had been slammed into a wall hard enough to split the skin. Broken blood vessels in my eyes from being choked. Missing teeth in the back of my mouth from being punched. I stood there naked in front of my twin sister, showing her the complete truth of what my marriage looked like. The body of a torture victim. Because that's what I was. Daniel wasn't just abusive, he was sadistic. He enjoyed hurting me. He enjoyed marking me. He enjoyed making me count as he burned me with cigarettes. Emma stood frozen, her face white, tears streaming down her cheeks. She reached out to touch the cigarette burns on my back, and I flinched involuntarily. Her hand dropped. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Oh my God, Rebecca, what has he done to you?" "This is what you've been defending," I said quietly. "This is the man you told me to be patient with. The man you said was under stress. The man you claimed loved me." Emma collapsed onto the floor, sobbing. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. He said you were lying. He said you had mental health issues. He was so convincing. How did I not see this?" "Because he charmed you. He made you love him so you'd defend him when I tried to tell you the truth. You're not stupid, Emma. You're manipulated. We both were. I should have believed you. You're my sister. You're my twin. I should have known you'd never lie about something like this. I'm so sorry. I'm so fucking sorry." I put my clothes back on slowly, every movement painful. I need your help now. I need you to believe me, support me, and help me gather evidence to put him in prison. Can you do that? Emma wiped her face and stood up, and I saw something change in her expression. The doubt was gone. The denial was gone. In its place was a cold fury I'd never seen before. I'm going to help you destroy him, she said. Whatever you need, whatever it takes. That monster is going to pay for every single thing he did to you. Over the next 3 days, Emma and I developed a plan. We couldn't just call the police. Daniel had already established a narrative that I was mentally unstable and self-harming. We needed irrefutable evidence. We needed to catch him in the act. We needed his confession on recording. First, I went to my family doctor and got a complete medical examination documenting every injury. Dr. Sandra Martinez was horrified. Dr. Walsh, these injuries are consistent with severe, prolonged physical abuse. Torture, really. Who did this to you? My husband. And I need you to document everything, photograph it, write detailed descriptions, date each injury based on healing stages. I'm going to need medical evidence for a criminal case. Dr. Martinez spent 3 hours examining me. She documented 35 cigarette burns, multiple bone fractures in various stages of healing, ligature marks, contusions, lacerations, and evidence of repeated head trauma. Her report was 20 pages long and included over 100 photographs. Rebecca, you need to leave immediately. This level of violence, you're lucky to be alive. He could kill you. I know, but I need more evidence first. I need him to confess. Second, Emma helped me set up hidden cameras throughout our house. Tiny cameras in smoke detectors, in picture frames, in air vents. Every room was covered. If Daniel assaulted me again, we'd have video proof. Third, I started secretly recording our conversations on my phone. The recordings app ran in the background constantly, capturing everything Daniel said to me. Fourth, Emma helped me open a bank account Daniel didn't know about and transferred money from our joint account in small increments. I was building an escape fund. Fifth, we contacted a domestic violence attorney named Jennifer Morrison, who specialized in high-risk cases. She reviewed my medical records, looked at my injuries, and confirmed what I already knew. Mrs. Walsh, your husband has committed dozens of felonies, aggravated assault, false imprisonment, criminal threatening, witness tampering. With your medical evidence and testimony, we can have him arrested. But I agree that a confession would make the case airtight. If you can get him to admit on recording what he's done, he'll never see the outside of a prison again. The opportunity came sooner than expected. On August 3, 2021, Daniel came home drunk and angry. He'd lost a major client and was looking for someone to blame. I knew what was coming. The pattern was established. He'd hurt me, then feel better, then apologize, then repeat. But this time, I was ready. The cameras were recording. My phone was recording. And Emma was listening, remotely through the phone connection, ready to call police if things escalated too far. You, Daniel said, pointing at me. This is your fault. You distract me. You make me weak. If I didn't have to deal with your bullshit, I'd be successful. Daniel, you lost a client because of your own performance. That has nothing to do with me. Don't fucking talk back to me. He moved toward me, and I stood my ground, which surprised him. What? You think you're brave now? I think you're a coward who beats his wife because he can't handle his own failures. His face darkened with rage. Say that again! You're a coward, a pathetic, weak coward who tortures his wife to feel powerful. He grabbed me by the throat and slammed me against the wall. I'll show you what power looks like. Do it, I said, looking directly at the hidden camera behind him. Show me. Show everyone what you really are. And Daniel, in his drunken rage, began to confess. As his hands tightened around my throat as he detailed every way he'd hurt me over the past 18 months, as he explained how he'd isolated me and manipulated Emma and made everyone think I was crazy, he gave us everything we needed. "I've broken your ribs 3 times, he said, punctuating each word with pressure on my throat. "I've burned you 35 times. I've choked you unconscious 6 times. I've locked you in rooms, starved you, beat you until you vomited. And you know what? I enjoyed it. Every second. Watching you break. Watching you realize no one believes you. Watching you understand that you're mine, and there's nothing you can do about it." The cameras captured it all. My phone recorded every word, and Emma, listening remotely, called 911 with the address and a description of assault in progress. Daniel was still choking me when police burst through the door. The night Daniel was arrested, I was transported to the hospital while he was taken to jail. My throat was severely bruised from his final assault, and doctors wanted to monitor me for swelling that could obstruct my airway. Emma rode with me in the ambulance, holding my hand and crying. "I should have believed you from the beginning," she kept saying. "I should have known. I'm your twin. I should have felt your pain." "You believed him because he's good at manipulation," I told her, my voice hoarse. "That's what abusers do. They isolate their victims by turning everyone against them. You weren't the problem, he was." At the hospital, a sexual assault nurse examiner documented my injuries from the strangulation and took photographs. "These are classic defensive wounds," she explained, showing me finger-shaped bruises on my arms where I'd tried to pull Daniel's hands away from my throat. "Combined with the ligature marks on your neck, this evidence is very clear. He nearly killed you tonight." Detective Michael Reynolds from the Nashville Police Department's Domestic Violence Unit came to interview me while I was still in the hospital. Emma stayed by my side throughout the interview, holding my hand and occasionally adding details about how Daniel had manipulated her. "Mrs. Walsh, I've reviewed the video footage from your home cameras," Detective Reynolds said. "That's some of the most clear-cut evidence of domestic violence I've seen in 20 years. Your husband confessed to multiple assaults on camera while actively strangling you. He's being held without bail pending his preliminary hearing." "What happens next?" I asked. "The district attorney's office will file formal charges, likely aggravated assault, kidnapping, false imprisonment, terroristic threatening, and potentially attempted murder based on tonight's assault. Your medical records showing 18 months of documented injuries will support a pattern of abuse. The video confession is devastating to any defense he might mount." "Will I have to testify?" "Yes. Your testimony about the abuse timeline, the intimidation tactics, the threats he made, that will be crucial." "But Mrs. Walsh, I have to warn you that defense attorneys often try to attack domestic violence victims' credibility. They'll bring up that you didn't report earlier, that you stayed with him, that you didn't seek help immediately. You need to be prepared for that." Emma interjected firmly. "She'll have me there. I'll testify about how Daniel manipulated me into defending him, how he created a false narrative about Rebecca being mentally unstable, how his charm was a tool to isolate her from her support system." Detective Reynolds nodded. "Ms. Walsh, your testimony will be valuable. It shows the sophisticated manipulation tactics Daniel used. That pattern of behavior strengthens the prosecution's case considerably." Over the next 2 weeks, as Daniel sat in jail, Emma and I worked with Assistant District Attorney Michelle Park to build the strongest case possible. Ada Park was a veteran prosecutor specializing in domestic violence cases, and she immediately understood the psychology of what had happened. "Rebecca, what Daniel did to you is textbook intimate partner terrorism," she explained during our first meeting. "He used physical violence, emotional manipulation, social isolation, financial control, and threats to create an environment where you felt completely helpless." The fact that he convinced your twin sister you were mentally ill shows how skilled he is at manipulation. What are the charges exactly? Emma asked. We're filing 8 counts of aggravated assault, 1 for each documented beating that resulted in serious injury. 3 counts of false imprisonment for the times he locked Rebecca in rooms. 2 counts of kidnapping with serious bodily injury. Multiple counts of terroristic threatening. And 1 count of attempted murder for the August 3rd strangulation assault where he explicitly said he wanted to kill her. What kind of sentence is he facing? I asked. If convicted on all counts, he's looking at 40 to 60 years in prison. Tennessee treats domestic violence very seriously, especially cases involving torture, which this clearly is. The cigarette burns alone constitute aggravated assault with torture enhancement. But building the case required more than just my testimony and the video evidence. We needed to establish the pattern and show how Daniel had operated systematically over 18 months. Emma provided detailed testimony about how Daniel had manipulated her. He'd call me after incidents and give his version first, always portraying Rebecca as dramatic, unstable, prone to self-harm. He'd send me articles about borderline personality disorder and say, "This sounds exactly like your sister." He weaponized my love for Rebecca against her. Every time she came to me for help, I'd already been primed to doubt her. We subpoenaed Daniel's phone records and found hundreds of text messages to Emma and my parents, all carefully crafted to paint me as mentally ill. Rebecca threatened to hurt herself again today. I'm so worried about her. The doctors say Rebecca might need psychiatric hospitalization. She's refusing treatment. I found Rebecca harming herself in the bathroom. How do I get her help? All lies, all manipulation, all designed to create a narrative that would allow him to continue abusing me without consequence. We also obtained Daniel's work computer and found disturbing searches. How to make bruises look like falls. Can domestic violence victims be committed? Signs of borderline personality disorder to show therapist. How long until strangulation kills someone? He'd been researching how to abuse me more effectively. How to make injuries look accidental. How to gaslight me into believing I was mentally ill. And most chillingly, how to kill me, if it came to that. Jennifer Morrison, my attorney, also helped me file for an emergency protective order and divorce. We're going to make sure Daniel never contacts you again, she said. We're also going to pursue civil damages. Your medical bills alone are over $50,000. Add in therapy costs, lost wages, pain and suffering. We're looking at a multi-million-dollar civil judgment. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for September 15th. Ada Park wanted to use it not just to establish probable cause for trial, but to present enough evidence that Daniel might plead guilty rather than face a jury. Rebecca, I need to prepare you for what this hearing will be like, she said during our final prep session. The defense attorney will try to suggest you're lying, that you injured yourself, that you had mental health issues. They'll point out that you didn't leave immediately, that you stayed with him for 18 months. You need to be ready to explain why. Because I was terrified, I said. Because he convinced everyone I was crazy. Because he threatened to kill me if I left. Because leaving is the most dangerous time for domestic violence victims. And he made sure I knew that. Emma squeezed my hand. And because he manipulated everyone around her, including me, so she had nowhere to turn. I'll make that crystal clear on the stand. The day before the hearing, Emma and I went to the clinic together. The first time I'd been back since the arrest. My staff greeted me with hugs and tears, horrified by what had been happening right under their noses. Marissa, the vet tech I'd confided in, apologized profusely. Dr. Walsh, I should have reported it anyway. Even when you asked me not to, I should have called the police. You did what I asked you to do, I told her, and you gave me someone who believed me when I needed it most. That mattered more than you know. That night, As Emma and I prepared for the next day's hearing, I felt something I hadn't felt in 18 months. Hope. Not just hope for justice, but hope that I could rebuild my life, reclaim my practice, and become the person I'd been before Daniel Walsh destroyed me. "Are you ready?" Emma asked. "To face him in court? To show everyone what he did? To make sure he never hurts anyone else?" I looked at my twin sister, my other half, my mirror, my ally. "Yes, I'm ready." The preliminary hearing began on September 15, 2021, at Davidson County Criminal Court. Judge Patricia Chen presided over the proceedings. The courtroom was packed. Media, domestic violence advocates, some of my veterinary colleagues, and my parents, who'd been horrified to learn the truth about Daniel's abuse. Daniel sat at the defense table in an orange jail jumpsuit, looking diminished without his usual charm and polish. His attorney, Robert Maxwell, was a high-priced defense lawyer known for aggressive tactics in domestic violence cases. I steeled myself for what I knew would be a brutal cross-examination. Ada Park delivered her opening statement. "Your Honor, this is a case about systematic torture disguised as marriage. For 18 months, Daniel Walsh brutally assaulted his wife, Rebecca Walsh, leaving her with broken bones, cigarette burns, strangulation marks, and permanent scarring. He isolated her from her support system by convincing her twin sister and her family that Rebecca was mentally unstable. He controlled her finances, monitored her communications, and threatened to kill her if she tried to leave. On August 3rd, he attempted to make good on that threat by strangling her while confessing to his crimes, all captured on video. The evidence will show that Daniel Walsh is a dangerous predator who tortured his wife for over a year and would have killed her if police hadn't intervened." Maxwell's response attempted to frame Daniel as a victim. "Your Honor, my client is a successful businessman who married a woman with undisclosed mental health issues. Over 18 months, Rebecca Walsh's behavior became increasingly erratic, self-harming, making false accusations, refusing treatment. Daniel tried desperately to help her, even coordinating with her sister, to get her psychiatric care. The night of August 3rd, Rebecca provoked Daniel during a heated argument, and he defended himself. The injuries Mrs. Walsh claims are from abuse are actually self-inflicted or accidental. This is a case of a mentally unstable woman destroying a good man's reputation." I wanted to scream. He was using Daniel's playbook, the exact narrative Daniel had created to trap me. The prosecution began presenting evidence. They showed the video from August 3rd, 20 minutes of Daniel strangling me while confessing to 18 months of abuse. The courtroom watched in horrified silence as Daniel detailed every way he'd hurt me. "I've broken your ribs 3 times. I've burned you 35 times. I've choked you unconscious 6 times. When the video finished, several observers were crying. Judge Chen's expression was one of barely contained fury. Ada Park then presented Dr. Martinez's medical report with over 100 photographs documenting my injuries. She walked the court through each injury, explaining the timeline and showing how the patterns of healing proved the abuse had occurred over many months. "These cigarette burns are in various stages of healing, some fresh, some scarred. That indicates repeated assaults over time, not a single incident. The fractures show bones that were broken, healed incorrectly without medical treatment, then broken again. This is torture, not self-harm." Maxwell tried to suggest I could have inflicted the injuries on myself, but Ada Park demolished that argument with a forensic expert. Dr. James Patterson, a forensic pathologist, testified. "It's physically impossible for someone to create these injuries themselves. The cigarette burns on Mrs. Walsh's back are in locations she couldn't reach. The strangulation marks show thumb placement consistent with someone facing her and choking her from the front. The defensive wounds on her arms show she was trying to protect herself from someone else. These are textbook assault injuries, not self-harm." Then it was my turn to testify. I walked to the witness stand, was sworn in, and sat facing the courtroom. Daniel stared at me with barely concealed hatred. Ada Park walked me through my testimony. Meeting Daniel, the courtship, the first incident of violence, the escalation, the isolation. I described every assault in detail, every burn, every beating, every threat. The jury wasn't present since this was just a preliminary hearing, but I wanted Judge Chen to understand the full scope of what had happened. Mrs. Walsh, why didn't you report the abuse earlier? Ada Park asked, anticipating the defense's line of attack. Because Daniel had convinced everyone I was mentally unstable. My own twin sister didn't believe me. He threatened to kill me if I went to the police. He threatened to kill my coworkers if I told them. He said if I reported him, he'd get me committed to a psychiatric hospital, and I'd lose my veterinary license. I felt completely trapped. What changed on August 3rd? I realized he was going to kill me eventually, whether I fought back or not. So I decided to gather evidence. Emma finally believed me after I showed her my scars. We set up cameras and recording devices. When Daniel came home drunk and angry, I goaded him into confessing, knowing the cameras were recording. It was risky, but it was the only way to get irrefutable proof. Maxwell's cross-examination was brutal, as expected. Mrs. Walsh, you claim you were terrified of your husband, yet you deliberately provoked him on August 3rd? That doesn't sound like someone who's afraid. I was terrified, but I was also desperate. Desperate people do brave things. You work as a veterinarian, a demanding job that requires focus and competence. Yet you claim you were being brutally beaten daily? How did you continue working if you were so severely injured? I hid my injuries. I wore long sleeves and high-necked shirts. I covered bruises with makeup. I took pain medication to get through surgeries. My coworkers noticed I wasn't well, but Daniel had convinced everyone it was mental illness, not abuse. You stayed with your alleged abuser for 18 months. You had opportunities to leave. Why didn't you? Because leaving is the most dangerous time for domestic violence victims. Statistics show that's when they're most likely to be killed. Daniel made it clear he'd kill me if I left. He also made it clear that no one would believe me, and he was right. Even my own twin sister didn't believe me until she saw the scars. Speaking of your twin sister, Emma Walsh has changed her story significantly. First, she defended Mr. Walsh. Now she's supporting you. Isn't it convenient that she suddenly believes you once you need an ally for court? Emma didn't change her story. Daniel's manipulation of her failed. When she finally saw the physical evidence, the burns, the scars, the broken bones, she could no longer deny the truth. That's not convenient. That's called facing reality. Then Emma testified. She walked to the stand with her head held high, ready to expose how Daniel had weaponized her against me. Ms. Walsh, you initially defended your brother-in-law, correct? Ada Park asked. Yes, to my eternal shame, I defended him for months. Daniel was extraordinarily manipulative. He'd call me after incidents and frame Rebecca as unstable, dramatic, and prone to self-harm. He sent me articles about mental illness and said they described my sister. He was so convincing that I doubted my own twin, someone I've known for 37 years. I failed Rebecca when she needed me most. What changed your mind? She showed me her scars, 35 cigarette burns, broken bones, ligature marks, scars from being cut with glass. When I saw her body, the physical evidence of torture, I couldn't deny it anymore. Daniel had manipulated me into being his enabler, and I'll regret that for the rest of my life. Do you believe your sister was mentally ill during this time? No. She was traumatized. She was terrified. She was being systematically tortured by her husband, but she wasn't mentally ill. I see that now. Daniel created a false narrative to isolate her, and I bought into it completely. Maxwell tried to attack Emma's credibility during cross-examination. Ms. Walsh, you admit you initially thought your sister was lying. What if you were right the first time? What if she convinced you to change your story? Emma's response was fierce. I've known my sister since before we were born. We shared a womb. We've shared everything for 37 years. When I saw her body, when I counted 35 cigarette burns on her back, I knew with absolute certainty that I'd been manipulated. No one self-inflicts that level of damage. No one creates ligature marks on their own neck that match their husband's hand size. I was wrong to defend Daniel Walsh, but I'm not wrong now. He's a monster, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows it. The prosecution presented one final piece of evidence that sealed Daniel's fate: his own computer searches. The defense had tried to exclude them, but Judge Chen allowed them as evidence of premeditation and planning. The defendant searched how long until strangulation kills someone 3 weeks before the August 3rd assault, Ada Park stated. He searched, can domestic violence victims be committed to psychiatric hospitals multiple times? He researched how to make injuries look accidental. This shows calculated planning, not someone defending himself from an unstable spouse. After 2 days of testimony and evidence, Judge Chen delivered her ruling. I find probable cause to bind over Daniel Walsh for trial on all charges. The evidence presented is overwhelming and disturbing. Mr. Walsh systematically tortured his wife for 18 months while manipulating her family into doubting her. The video confession, combined with extensive medical evidence and corroborating testimony from Dr. Emma Walsh, establishes a clear pattern of domestic violence terrorism. Bond is denied. The defendant will remain in custody pending trial. Daniel's face crumbled. For the first time, he seemed to realize his manipulations had failed. His charm hadn't worked. His lies hadn't convinced anyone. The mask had finally fallen away, revealing the monster underneath. As deputies led him back to jail, he looked at me and mouthed, "I'll kill you." Emma saw it too. "Did he just threaten you in open court?" Judge Chen had also seen it. "Mr. Walsh, I'm adding a charge of criminal threatening to your indictment. Threatening your victim in front of witnesses shows you have no remorse and remain a danger." I walked out of that courthouse with Emma beside me, surrounded by supporters, feeling something I hadn't felt in 18 months. Safe. Daniel was going to trial. He was going to prison, and I was finally free. The trial took place in November 2021, 3 months after the preliminary hearing. Daniel's attorneys tried every tactic. They claimed I was lying, that I'd fabricated evidence, that I was mentally unstable, and had coached Emma to support my delusions. But the evidence was insurmountable. The jury saw the videos. They saw the photographs of my injuries. They heard medical experts explain why my injuries couldn't have been self-inflicted. They heard Emma describe Daniel's manipulation tactics. They heard my testimony about 18 months of torture. Most devastatingly, they heard Daniel's own recorded confession as he strangled me. The trial lasted 2 weeks. On November 19th, the jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning with their verdict. Guilty on all counts. 8 counts of aggravated assault. 3 counts of false imprisonment. 2 counts of kidnapping. Multiple counts of terroristic threatening. And 1 count of attempted murder for the August 3rd strangulation. Daniel's face went pale as the verdicts were read. His attorneys immediately filed for a new trial, but Judge Chen denied the motion. Sentencing was scheduled for 6 weeks later. At sentencing on January 7, 2022, I gave a victim impact statement. I stood at the podium facing Daniel, my voice steady and strong. Daniel Walsh stole 18 months of my life, He broke my bones. He burned my skin. He strangled me until I lost consciousness. He made me believe I was crazy when I was actually just being tortured. He turned my own twin sister against me by manipulating her into doubting me. He threatened to kill me, my coworkers, anyone who tried to help me. But what he didn't break was my will to survive. He didn't destroy my ability to fight back. And he certainly didn't win. Because I'm standing here, alive and whole, while he's going to prison for a very long time. I want other domestic violence survivors to know. It's not your fault. If your family doesn't believe you, it doesn't mean you're lying. If your abuser is charming and convincing, it doesn't mean you're crazy. Document everything, gather evidence, and when you're ready, fight back with everything you have. Emma also gave a statement. I enabled Daniel Walsh's abuse of my sister by believing his lies about her mental illness. I will carry that guilt forever. But I also want other family members of abuse victims to know. Abusers are experts at manipulation. If you doubt your loved one's story, look for physical evidence, look for patterns, and believe victims especially when, the abuser is charming and convincing. Judge Chen's sentence was harsh and comprehensive. Mr. Walsh, you are one of the most dangerous domestic abusers I've encountered in 25 years on the bench. You didn't just physically assault your wife, you psychologically tortured her. You systematically isolated her. You manipulated her family into doubting her. You threatened to kill her. And when you were caught, you showed no remorse. This court hereby sentences you to 55 years in prison, multiple consecutive sentences for your various crimes. You will serve a minimum of 40 years before becoming eligible for parole. By then, you'll be 91 years old. You will spend the rest of your productive life in prison, which is exactly what you deserve. 55 years. Daniel Walsh would die in prison. The civil case was equally satisfying. Jennifer Morrison pursued Daniel's assets aggressively. We were awarded $3.2 million in damages, compensation for medical bills, lost wages, pain and suffering, and emotional distress. Daniel's house, his retirement accounts, his car, everything was liquidated to pay the judgment. More importantly, I received full ownership of our marital home once it was sold. My practice remained completely mine, and every asset we'd shared was transferred to me. Daniel was left with nothing but a prison cell. The Tennessee Board of Medical Examiners investigated Daniel's employer and found that his pharmaceutical company had ignored warning signs of his violence. They'd received complaints from colleagues about his aggressive behavior, but had done nothing. The company settled a wrongful negligence lawsuit for an undisclosed amount that went toward funding a domestic violence shelter in Nashville. My recovery was slow but steady. I spent 6 months in intensive therapy working through the trauma. Emma and I spent countless hours talking through her guilt and my pain, rebuilding our twin bond that Daniel had nearly destroyed. I should have known, Emma would say repeatedly. He fooled everyone, I'd remind her. You're not a bad sister. You're a manipulated one. There's a difference. Eventually, Emma could forgive herself, and I could forgive her too. Because Daniel was the villain of this story, not Emma. She'd been a victim of his manipulation, just as I'd been a victim of his violence. My veterinary practice thrived. My staff rallied around me. My clients were incredibly supportive, and word spread about what I'd survived. Other domestic violence survivors started reaching out, asking for advice, sharing their own stories. I became an advocate, speaking at domestic violence awareness events and training veterinarians to recognize signs of abuse in their clients. Animals can't speak for themselves, I'd tell audiences. Neither can abuse victims who've been isolated and silenced. As veterinarians, we're trained to notice subtle signs of distress in animals. We need to apply those same observational skills to the humans in our exam rooms. Emma and I started a foundation in honor of our recovery, the Walsh Sisters Foundation for Domestic Violence Awareness. We funded shelters, legal aid for survivors, and training programs for medical professionals to recognize abuse. 5 years after Daniel's conviction, I'm thriving. I'm in a healthy relationship with a kind man who treats me with respect and gentleness. Emma and I are closer than ever. My practice is successful. I've helped dozens of other survivors escape their abusers and rebuild their lives. Daniel sits in Riverbend Maximum Security Prison, serving his 55-year sentence. He's been denied parole twice. According to his prison records, he's had multiple disciplinary incidents for violence against other inmates. The monster is still a monster, but at least he's caged. And every day that I wake up free, healthy, and loved, that's my revenge. I survived. I escaped. I won. 7 years have passed since I showed Emma my scars, and everything changed. I've had time to heal, reflect, and understand what happened and how I survived. These are the lessons I want to share. Lessons that might save someone else's life. First, trust the victim, even when the abuser is charming. Daniel fooled everyone. My parents, my friends, my colleagues, and most painfully, my twin sister. He was handsome, successful, and convincing. But charm is often a mask. Abusers are skilled manipulators who carefully cultivate public personas while being monsters in private. If someone you love tells you they're being abused, believe them, even if their abuser seems wonderful. Second, physical evidence is undeniable. What finally made Emma believe me wasn't my words. It was my scars. The cigarette burns couldn't be explained away. The broken bones couldn't be rationalized. The ligature marks couldn't be dismissed. If you suspect someone is being abused, look for physical evidence. Bruises in various stages of healing. Weight loss. Injuries that don't match the explanations. Evidence doesn't lie. Third, leaving is dangerous, but staying can be fatal. I stayed for 18 months because I was terrified and isolated. But Daniel's violence was escalating. If I'd stayed longer, he would have killed me. For anyone in an abusive relationship, document everything, gather evidence, plan carefully, but ultimately, leave. Shelters exist. Advocates exist. Legal protections exist. Use them. Fourth, manipulation isolates victims from support systems. Daniel's most effective weapon wasn't his fists. It was his ability to make everyone doubt me. He turned my twin sister against me, convinced my family I was mentally ill, and made me feel completely alone. That isolation is how abusers maintain control. For family members and friends, don't let abusers isolate their victims. Stay connected even when the victim seems crazy or dramatic. Fifth, you are not responsible for your abuse. For 18 months, I blamed myself. I thought if I were better, calmer, more obedient, Daniel would stop hurting me. But abuse is never the victim's fault. Nothing I did justified what he did to me. Nothing you do justifies your partner hurting you. Most importantly, I learned that survival requires fighting back strategically. I couldn't physically overpower Daniel, but I could outsmart him. I could gather evidence. I could set up cameras. I could goad him into confessing while recording. I could use the legal system to protect myself. Intelligence and planning can be more powerful than physical strength. To everyone watching who's in an abusive relationship, who's being hurt by someone who claims to love them, who's isolated and afraid, please know, you deserve better. You deserve safety. You deserve love without violence. Call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-723. Document your injuries. Tell someone you trust. Gather evidence. Make a safety plan. And when you're ready, leave. Thank you for watching my story. If it resonated with you, please subscribe. And if you're experiencing abuse, please reach out for help today. Your life is worth saving. You are worth saving. Remember, my twin sister's doubt nearly cost me my life, but her belief ultimately saved it. Sometimes survival requires showing the scars, literal or metaphorical, to make people see the truth. Don't be afraid to reveal your pain to save your life.